It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design.
Hey, I'm Chad Jetner.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
And I'm Kyle Bacher. And with us today, we have Jason Scherschlitt. Trying to spell that last name. And he is our head of product. And he did a thing. There's a thing out there called the Pollinator. And we're going to talk about that today. So first off, we did a podcast a long time ago about product. And it's out there. So we're going to be talking about product a little bit. But if you want like a better overview of product, check out that podcast. This one, we're going to focus on this cool thing you did that I really like called the Pollinator. So Jason, do you want to kind of kick us off with a little bit of your background and then what you're doing with this?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Again, my name's Jason Scherschlitt, and I am SDG's head of product. I've been with SDG nearly 4 years, but I'm a longtime friend of SDG's and even a former customer of SDG's. My career has essentially been in digital product management and product strategy, and for over 23 years, I've worked in various product leadership roles for a variety of interesting organizations. And I lead our product work at Solution Design Group. The Pollinator, as you mentioned, is a new product-focused newsletter, an email newsletter that I publish, our product practice publishes on a monthly basis, that essentially is a digest of great product thinking from around the web, from other great product thinkers.
So I subscribe to the newsletter and I've read through all of it and I really like it. I like the lead-ins to the other content you're providing, kind of the setups, and I love the writing. Jason's a good writer, if you didn't know that. And he's got a mastery of language that I do not possess. So when I read that stuff, I'm always blown away.
Jason is my go-to when I need to figure out things like, should I put a hyphen between oofta? And then not only does he have the answer, but he has the lineage of the answer. So basically any grammar question I have, it's Liz Truss and Jason Scherschlitt are my two go-tos. Liz Truss, she wrote the Eat, Shoots, and Leaves book, if you remember that. Yeah.
Yep.
Wait. Don't leave us hanging. Is there a hyphen or no hyphen?
No.
Two separate words. Oof and da.
Right.
Individually. Blew my mind. I've been hyphenating oofta since forever and have recently changed. Yeah.
I'm glad we got that settled. That's always good to have that stuff nailed down, right? Because otherwise.
So I was gonna go ahead, Peter. I don't want to step on you.
I was just going to ask another question. Like, hey, tell me about this Pollinator and how it got started.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, wonderful question, guys. I'll answer you both. So the Pollinator, I as Kyle mentioned, I've always been at heart a writer, and I find the way I understand what I think about things is by writing about it and kind of analyzing it through language. And I've got a long professional career, kind of at the intersection of language and writing and digital products. So it's sort of a natural way for me to express and share how I think about product matters is through writing about it. We have at SDG a bunch of very vibrant Slack channels. One that I think is really quite active is our product Slack channel, where internally anybody who's involved in our product work, or even people who are just sort of adjacent to it, experienced design folks, project delivery folks, etc., share articles, discuss some of the matters that are, included in those articles, and have quite a lively discussion. I, in my work as a product strategy consultant with our clients, am often running into, new people with new problems, et cetera. And even, after I'll be engaged with them in a consulting engagement, I'll think, that guy over there would benefit from reading this article. Or I ran into a situation a year ago, and I remember, this company was kind of dealing with a certain situation of prioritization or measurement or whatever. And I came across an article that seems to make sense. And occasionally, of course, I'll send them off to an individual in an email with a little bit of context. But then just thinking about that collection of, as well as our vibrant internal community, as well as my interest in history. I've written newsletters and other, previous jobs. I thought, I should just start publishing this stuff in some sort of a newsletter. So that's sort of the genesis of it. Started, I kind of conceived of the idea earlier this spring. We had a test issue early in the summer, and we've now published a couple more official issues, and we'll continue to do so on a monthly basis.
Yeah, that Slack channel was sort of the pre-Pollinator.
Yeah.
You were posting like a lot of kind of this stuff in the same vein.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about it.
Yeah.
So
it's actually a little testing ground now for what goes in the newsletter. There's been a couple things that I've, gotten a little chatter going on our internal channel and thought, oh, this seems like a topic that's worth sharing with others and points of view that are worth sharing with others. Yeah. I also would love to emphasize that while at the moment, I don't think there's a word in one of the first few Pollinator issues that wasn't written by me, it's not just a one-man thing. I mean, this is an SDG production, and while you'll probably get a lot of my voice, I'd love to start getting some, guest contributors, et cetera. So I think we've got a pretty good path forward for doing that as well, to elevate other voices at SDG and other perspectives, et cetera.
Monthly, is that how does that feel? Does that feel just about right for the size and the length? And
yeah, I think so. I mean, we aren't intending it to be, a daily rundown of what's happened in product, nor do we want it to just be kind of random or occasional or ad hoc. That monthly rhythm, I think, is frequent enough that it can kind of get a little bit of kind of rhythm and expectation, et cetera, but not so frequent that it's not something we're able, even just through capacity, I've got other work to do with clients, et cetera. So I think that monthly will work pretty well for us. And, as good product folks, this is all an experiment. I mean, what we're trying to do here is, build good thinking among SDG's customers or prospective customers or friends of SDG or friends of SDGers, anyone who ends up subscribing, getting them kind of smarter about their product practices and more in tune to the way product is done well, and perspectives on product from other thinkers and writers across the internet. And if we're not doing that, because maybe it's not frequent enough or we're not hitting enough, the right topics, et cetera, we adapt. I mean, that's, fundamental to the notion of building good products is
Nice.
you adjust all along the way as you learn what's working and what's not. Even, at some point, you'll say, boy, this thing isn't doing any good for us anymore at all, possibly. And then we say, well, maybe we should shut it down or find a new format or whatever. I mean, that's not the plan, but
let's not kill it off just yet.
Yeah.
And we're also announcing that it's done. No more Pollinator.
No, we are not.
We are not. We're excited.
But it's good that it's
happening.
not just a
thing.
blind feed of product news.
Exactly.
And,
Yep.
And it's curated.
It's curated. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a nice big subscribe button and form, all that stuff.
So Jason,
go ahead.
technology companies usually don't become publishers of newsletters, right? That's not usually, or unless you're IBM. I've devoured many a red book in my day.
Sure.
But so this isn't usually kind of our jam. What was the impetus for, I mean, you've already talked about why it exists.
Yep.
Why are we getting into the publishing business? And what is your fugue state outcome? Like, what do you want to have happen in a year with this?
Yeah, great question. So I guess the first thing I'd say is, well, technology services companies like, Solution Design Group with our wonderful roster of software engineers and project managers and business analysts and QA folks and data architects and all designers, UX researchers, et cetera, all the wonderful talent we have on our team. And that's our kind of our core way of putting our mission into the world. I would say that almost every modern organization, and this is one of the interesting things about the 30-year rise of the web, has to have become a publisher in some way. You have content that needs to be written and edited and managed. Right. You have to kind of, develop standards and processes and editorial processes and some of these things that maybe you aren't quite used to. So my first point is that even if companies may not think we're a publishing company. In fact, you kind of are in the modern world. I'd even go so far as to say this very podcast is an example of, SDG as media company. Here we are, creating a video and audio program. Using technology and publishing it out into the world for an audience. So we need to kind of think like publishers and content creators, et cetera. So that's kind of my first response to that. The second response is that it's all on a continuum of fulfilling whatever SDG's purpose or mission is, which I would say is, we exist in order to help our customers, the companies of the world, particularly, local to us, but we work with people all over the country, et cetera, and even the world, to help companies get better at creating good technology and digital products so that they can solve problems for their businesses and for their customers. That's why we provide consulting services to our clients. And since that's really the mission of Solution Design Group, providing content that helps explain good product practices is just another way to fulfill that mission. Obviously, it's a different business model. This is a free newsletter versus, paid consulting gigs, et cetera.
Yeah.
But it's really, I think, well aligned with what SDG exists to do.
Well, when I look at this and I've looked at some of the posts you've done in our insights section on our website, it looks like one of the challenges with product is that product thinking is getting people to that. Like there's a gap, knowledge gap. We're not, I don't know how long. I mean, products have been around forever. Product thinking, product mindset, all that has not. So to make that shift happen, it does take a lot of knowledge transfer. And
new ways of working, new practices, how you measure success, what you celebrate. Those are things that change quite a bit in sort of a product-led or product-driven model. And we do a lot of it. We actually work on, traditional project-driven. How are we going to get something done to meet its requirements by its dates, on its budget? We do a lot of that kind of work, but we also work increasingly often, and this is a lot of stuff that I help lead, in these product models where the goal isn't get the thing done on time and on budget, and then we call ourselves, satisfied.
Right.
That might have just built the wrong thing well. Might have just, not done the thing we should have done. We did it on time and on budget and with the right resources, but it actually didn't delight the customers or build the business, et cetera. And celebrating outcomes, what are the things that we're doing for a business or for our customer base, is what we want to do in a product mindset versus just celebrating the fact that we got things done. You mentioned, Kyle, blog posts in our insights section of the solutiondesign.com website. There's one I wrote a while back now. I think it's called Let Them Eat Cake, which is, about this very thing. What causes you to put cake in the break room? What do you celebrate? Because we're all familiar with the ritual of somebody brings in treats because we did a thing. But are you, putting cake because you got a thing done that you actually don't know if it's going to actually deliver an outcome? Or are you celebrating that you caused some change to happen? And so my whole sort of thesis of that post is put cake to celebrate outcomes, not just stuff that you've executed.
Avoid early cake.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take cake anytime. Don't get me wrong. But
it's great. So what's your audience for this?
Great question.
Who are you writing for besides me?
Small but mighty. So again, we just started it this summer and kind of preceded the audience with a few friendlies and former customers and former colleagues and current colleagues of mine, et cetera. I am proud to say we've doubled the subscriber base, although I don't think we'll keep that rate of doubling happening. But we've done that in the last couple months. But what we intend to do is, start by focusing on people who, frankly, have worked with SDG or might work with SDG in product engagements, people who are aware of Solution Design Group and maybe want to learn a little bit more about our point of view on these matters. So that might be, as a product at a client company or user experience folks or business leaders or heads of software delivery, et cetera. But I would love it if we could start expanding beyond kind of the people who are 1 degree removed from SDG to people who maybe are a couple degrees removed from SDG, but do care about product. I will also say I don't think it's necessarily going to hit the like hardcore product people. And, I'm engaged in communities on social media, et cetera, with people who are product strategists and product managers, and they share stuff on Twitter or whatever we're calling Twitter these days, and LinkedIn and, blogs and communities and conferences and things. I don't think it's necessarily for that, like the product insiders. I think it's for kind of the product adjacent or the product curious who don't have time to like read every post from all the kind of cool product thinkers, but who instead say, somebody just give me a digest of a handful of things that I should know about from within the last month, instead of having to, comb their feeds every day. That's the audience I would love to hit. Like I said, the product curious.
So I want to know product, but I don't know product, but I'm never going to go out and learn it on my own. And I don't feel like hiring Jason just yet because it sounds cool, but I want to learn a little bit more. So this is the thing to get your feet wet.
Yeah, I think actually one of you guys, I think it was Chad, before we jumped on this, started recording this podcast, you were mentioning somebody at an SDG client who's undergoing some training on what it means to have a product mindset or a product point of view and how they might shift from project work to product work, and maybe is a little bit overwhelmed with that. I'm thinking that would be the perfect type of audience for this newsletter. Give me a monthly digest of good thinking in product, kind of shaped by SDG's point of view, with some expertise, but that I can do something with.
Can I ask you a question that has nothing to do with the newsletter and
you can ask me anything, Chad.
Awesome. All right, you mentioned Twitter, or I think we're calling it X now.
I'm calling it Twitter, but sure. Yeah.
As a product person, what happened, man? Like, what would you?
Oh gosh, what an interesting question. I didn't really prepare thoughts on that, but I have them.
Let's start with, what would you like tomorrow, right? Like you walk into Twitter, X, whatever, and maybe the first thing you do is you change the name back. And then after you do that, like, what do you fix? Like, what do you focus on?
I think Musk had a fundamental misunderstanding of the point of that platform and the point of that company. He even fairly early, and I'm just extemporaneously remembering this, fairly early in his tenure here over the course of the last however many months it's been, posted something about how we're changing things at Twitter and the engineers are going to have more sway. I actually remember he used the words, they're going to have more sway, and that we are fundamentally a kind of engineering company, and that's who we're going to be, and that's how we're going to make decisions. And I thought, gosh, he's kind of missing the mark. He's fundamentally a kind of community and a place for human beings to share and find like-minded people. And he seemed to be kind of discounting what I'd call like cultural and social community value and really mission of that platform. The technology obviously needs to enable it, and I'm not going to dispute that he should make good technical choices. But I think that choice right there, like, let's forget about the actual purpose of what this thing is for, probably has led him to make some weird decisions.
It's amazing that if they are a technology company, if the engineers have a lot of sway, it's down an unbelievable amount for a company focused on engineering.
Right. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. And then there was the whole blue check debacle where he just totally seemed to misunderstand the point of that. And he thought it was about looking cool and like, shouldn't we be able to just buy yourself a blue check, et cetera, instead of about kind of verification of actual people and things, so that we understand when we're following somebody who says he's LeBron James, we know that really is LeBron James, and he wants people to be able to buy their way into fame. for the low price of a few bucks a month, which again, I think is a fundamental misunderstanding of value prop and kind of purpose. So anyway, that's my quick analysis off the cuff. Thanks for asking and putting me on.
So you could
Elon,
go
if you're
in,
listening,
you could go into, I'm just going to call it Twix, Twitter X, and give them a hand, help them do some user research, market studies.
Well,
things
and
like
again,
that.
there are many smart people who've been involved in that, and I don't want to get into all the kind of, ideologies and such that might underlie some of these choices, but I've got opinions. Anyway.
Maybe the engineers just want more time off, and so it's okay if it goes down more often. They're just going to take some time away. It's okay.
Sure. You seem to misunderstand when engineers get called into the office, Peter. It's not, site's down, sweet, we can take a week off.
No, I have a long understanding of when you get called in, for sure.
Right.
I've worked too many midnights in my life. All right. So let's talk about Pollinator.
That's what we've been doing. I like it.
I have a question about who is going to be contributing. Is it just, you mentioned you and some people that are like close to product and things like that. Are you thinking that, product leaders we've worked with in the industry or people that you have contact with, do you see doing any collaboration on stuff?
Yeah, I can see any and all of that happening as long as it kind of continues to fulfill this mission of building a great product community. So as I mentioned, I think one of the first things I'd like to do is start maybe incorporating some other voices from within the walls of Solution Design Group, maybe from some of our user experience strategists who often serve as, de facto product strategists in consulting engagements, or project leaders, or, there's SDGs filled with smart folks. So even just, contributing a brief article or their point of view on an article that they share, I think that's going to be who's involved in it. But beyond the walls of SDG, one thing that has pleased me is I've had a couple folks from the readership send me like, hey, here's an article I came across that I thought you might enjoy. And in a couple cases, I think I've included them in the Pollinator. So I want to continue to do that as well, like encourage. And I need to kind of think through how to use the tech platform we're using. And we, enable commenting or do a little bit more to try to get, collect insights from readers. So I think, we could start getting, content from people outside of SDG. And then, as you mentioned, Kyle, even beyond that, maybe even some, I could imagine something like a brief interview with a product leader who explains how they handle something, et cetera. Again, all with this mission of connecting people from across the product community through great practices, content, problem solving, and those sorts of things.
The Pollinator name, calling it the Pollinator.
Yeah.
To me, I looked at that and I was like, well, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is. But it's very intentional, Kyle. So I keep talking about this kind of model that I picture of at SDG. I'm consulting with all sorts of different companies, and I might be dealing with transportation of road salt one day and methane abatement another day, and great e-learning experiences to help with skilled trades on another day. So we kind of are in different domains and working with different companies and customers and people with different experiences all the time. And the metaphor I've always used for that, and I've used this frankly for many years, is I feel like I'm a honeybee in a garden, and that what I'm doing and the value I might bring to that garden is I'm just kind of flying around from one flower to another. And as you do so, if you understand the way pollination of gardens works, those bees and butterflies, what we call pollinators, fly around and bring pollen literally to help fertilize the entire garden, so that as a bee flies around, the whole thing starts to bloom. And that's why, you need bees to make gardens, et cetera. So when I think of kind of my role as a consultant with our clients, I often just kind of have in my head this idea of a bumblebee flying from flower to flower. And that's the metaphor I ended up using. That's why I called it the pollinator, because I think that's kind of the mission of the publication too. It's a bumblebee thing.
Are you worried about cross-pollination?
No, I like cross-pollination. That's the point. That's where we get all sorts of interesting, growth and et cetera. Yeah. I'll actually say, sometimes we use in software making, all language is kind of metaphorical. And a lot of times we use these kind of factory or manufacturing types of metaphors. It almost sounds like kind of an assembly line. Something goes from one thing to the next. And I've always thought those metaphors don't really reflect the way great digital products end up getting created and the way teams work together, et cetera. And I've always kind of liked some more organic type of metaphors like gardens, because maybe unforeseen things happen, like weather happens to a garden, or there's drought, or things that you kind of need to take care of, and weeds crop up, but you can kind of tend the whole thing. So I oftentimes think a good product manager or product leader kind of operates like a gardener in helping kind of prune and shape and grow and watching the whole thing bloom. So I've always liked that kind of set of metaphors for digital products.
So was the newsletter hosting choice, was that just fortuitous, or?
That's totally coincidental. What you're referring to is that the third-party newsletter platform we're using is actually called Beehive, Beehiiv, so 2 I's and no E in Beehive. And that's just a fairly popular, relatively new newsletter hosting platform. The fact that it's called Beehive and uses this bee metaphor, and I'm calling our thing the pollinator, is totally a coincidence. In fact, I'd already settled on calling it the pollinator well before I looked around at what platforms we might use, and that was not at all a factor in selecting it. Although it is just kind of a fun coincidence.
It's fun. It was just like, it has to be coincidental, but
it totally is. Yep.
It's just really cute.
Yeah. Yep.
So, is this a good place if somebody doesn't know a dang thing about product and just heard some buzzwords floating around and was curious about it? Is this a good place for them to go? Is this a new product person friendly environment? Yeah,
I'm not going to dissuade anyone from reading it, and I hope it's kind of welcoming to the new product thinkers, etc. I wouldn't say that it's just like an introduction to product, depending on when you first read an issue, you're not going to necessarily get like product 101, tell me what, the basics of a value proposition is, and how do I think about my users, and the problem statement, and the solutions framed as hypotheses and measurement. And I mean, we'll hit on all those kinds of issues over the course of publishing these things. But you might get some content that I would call is fairly advanced product thinking, managing multiple portfolios of kind of complex products, and you might get some kind of basic stuff just depending on any issue. None of this stuff is becoming a great product leader, while it's really an art and a practice, and I think it requires a lot of skill. It's not like you just can learn it by reading something, nor is it that the things that you do read are so kind of arcane and tough to grasp that you have to, you can't handle some of the advanced concepts. A lot of it is fairly sensible. Make things that respond to the needs of your customer and be willing to pivot, and empower your teams to go do it. It's some of these kind of really basic ideas that we reinforce.
I was reading one of your posts. I don't know if it was a Pollinator article or on our website, but it kind of made me think of that Zig Ziglar quote, if you want to get what you want, give other people what they want. And that's not exactly the quote. As I said it, I realized I'm off a bit, but it's basically, if you give people what they want, you get what you want back. And it seems like product thinking is around kind of serving the customer, the end user, knowing your users, doing that user research, kind of understanding what they need, and then providing it.
I think you're right. There is, some kind of core values, I think, to product thinking include things like humility, empathy for other people, understanding that what I think we should do might actually be wrong, and that we have to kind of learn or discover the product that's going to win the market instead of presuming we know it. I think that's what you're getting at there, Kyle.
Yeah.
That idea of generosity, humility, empathy. These are all great values, for living a life as well as for managing a product.
It's interesting. You don't hear those terms bantered about for projects or anything like that, right? That's all getting it. What's that?
Or for developers.
Well, we try to be a little. Okay, you're right.
Well, and one point I'll make there, just kind of, promoting the product mindset, is it's not just something for the product manager person to have. One of the kind of core values and core like principles of great products is empowering product teams, which are, small cross-functional groups of people who have a variety of talents. Get me a high, that there's kind of this classic product triad, which is the product manager who worries about things like business value, viability, the product designer who worries about usability, desirability, and the product engineer who worries about things like feasibility. How are we going to make this thing happen? And that triad working together is really one of the most, if you get an effective product team, which isn't huge. And by product team, I don't mean the department of product managers. I mean the group of people working on a product together, right, with all their skills: research, design, architecture, data, QA, analysis, all of it. That's what a wonderful, that's what produces wonderful products. So to your point, some of these values that I'm talking about, they're great when they're kind of shared amongst a team and we're all kind of in this together. And I think we've all probably been on, had these moments in our careers where you're like, man, that was just a satisfying thing. And we produced a great result. And I worked with some really cool and interesting people. And that's the kind of thing that I think, good product thinking can enable and empower.
It's more at the front of the product mindset rather than sort of a product, so to speak, of the product mindset, right?
Yeah.
Right. We redid our intranet, and I look at it's called the HQ. I look at it like it's a product.
Yeah, great.
Because it's in service to our organization, and there's different things out there for different people. Part of that redesign had a lot of product thinking going on.
Great.
We did some user research, and we were thinking about the result and serving the users. And I think it's been successful because I don't hear people complaining about it all the time like the old ones. Mm-hmm. But it's, we have a team of people and we don't really have official product titles and whatnot, but we're sort of rolling that way.
That's so great. I love that sort of thing where like teams operate with that mindset. They're trying to satisfy users and, drive certain outcomes for the business and their users. And that's product work. You don't need to be called a product manager, product strategist, or product owner to have that mindset.
Yeah, and like you call it a mindset, and it's not a rigid, like what's the word for it, process,
recipe or formula or something, right? Yep.
So it's just having that and working that way, you're fine. You don't have to define all of the things around it. You might end up getting there, but it doesn't mean you have to have all that kind of in the hopper to start.
Yeah.
So when's your next issue coming out?
We're in mid-September here as we're recording this right now. But my rhythm has been to spend the last week or two of a month in addition to my day job, collecting some of the articles I'd like to kind of to post in the next one. So I've just kind of started that a little bit and had some ideas about what my next theme is going to be. And then about the last week of the month, I kind of go heads down deep into writing some of these things. And then we have an internal review cycle with SDG's marketing folks, et cetera. And then we'll probably publish it during the first week of the month. So long answer. is that. Short answer is probably first week of October. You'll see the next issue.
Is there a printed version? I want to get like issue number 1. Right, and get it
like
autographed
a comic
and signed.
book
I think
or something.
Yeah.
I have in my home office a very nice Hewlett Packard printer.
Yeah.
And they actually owe me some instant ink that has gone with their little subscription service, and apparently it's on its way. Once I get some instant ink and can print again, Chad, I will print you an issue of the newsletter. Maybe we can, frame it with a little photo or something, and I could even sign it for you, and then you can have the collector's edition.
And then you have to call it issue 1 of
volume 1, issue number 1, etc. I actually in my head use that schema for our Pollinator right now. We're in volume 1. We're going to have issue 3 coming out or whatever.
And so they're all around a specific theme and kind of.
Yeah. I mean, we're
try to target it.
Bees are flying around a garden here, Peter. So there's a little bit of it's not always, despite the use of the word beeline, bees don't fly in a straight line, man.
Bees don't travel in a beeline, do they?
Right. So yes, there's kind of themes and such. I've got some ideas on stuff to explore in the next few issues. You'll probably be seeing something on the notion of product market fit. You'll probably be seeing some things on the notion of minimum viable product versus minimum lovable product and kind of other ways of thinking about
that sounds interesting.
First products to get into the market. These are just some kind of ideas I have of stuff to write about. And again, I want to emphasize one of the great things about the Pollinator is it isn't, hey, this is what this guy at SDG with a funny long last name thinks. This is what he's come across or what we've come across that we think is worth sharing from other product thinkers. There are all sorts of great bloggers and writers and newsletters. I mean, there are newsletters that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I'm not trying to be, we don't need just another one of those, but maybe a digest of some of the thinking from some of these other publications.
Well, I've seen you walk in the office with your shoes covered in pollen from tons of different plants. And so it's not just your pollen, it's not just your garden.
Yeah, that's my point. It comes from it. I'm just the bee. The pollen's coming from all these other. I'm sorry, I'm exhausting this metaphor.
To get you a bee hat or something.
Yeah.
This Prince, how do you pronounce Principe,
that's just that's Italian. So one of my little design motifs, and I don't know if this will last forever, but partly because I like getting imagery that's in the public domain and can be used freely without, royalties and such. So I've been finding from, public domain websites and Wikimedia Commons and things, imagery that's old. And that last, you're referring to the last Pollinator issue, which I called Principe del Pollinator. That's because the image I used as kind of the header image is the frontispiece from a 1640s book called Principe del Disegno, and I forgive my pronunciation, but it's Italian, which was Principles of Design, and I talked about principles and product principles in my intro article. So that's all.
I think that article is something that somebody could arrive at that's cold.
Yeah, totally.
And learn a lot about product that way, getting those core principles. Any chance this could be every 2 weeks?
There's always chances for everything. Again, we're evaluating how well this is working. It's probably that'll be a matter of capacity and management. But again, if we start saying it isn't just a one-man show, sure, some of those sorts of things could happen too, because then we can distribute the labor a little bit. That's maybe a way that could happen. But we want to get kind of off to a good start here with a monthly newsletter and get some good kind of traction with that, and maybe increasing the cadence will help at some point.
But it's nice to have a cadence, so I know that to expect a new newsletter every month and not just be randomly shooting it to my inbox.
Yep, you got it. Yeah, it isn't just haphazard. Yep. And that's kind of
seeing one where you've really dug into the HQ and have lots of tips and advice about product around that you can write an article about and send to me.
Well, it's funny you mentioned you said, I'm treating this intranet site like a product. And I actually love that because, especially at SDG, we aren't working necessarily with people who create they're not startups who are creating software products that they're then licensing and earning direct revenue from. In many cases, these are, organizations that have been around before the internet, fulfilling their mission, whether they're making, they're in the agriculture space or whatever, and treating their digital experiences, because like I said, every company is a publisher. Every company is also a software producer, whether they realize it or not.
It's
Even
true.
if you make dog food, you're a software company, and you got to think about, we're going to order from our suppliers, and that requires these technical integrations and such. And then, with the rise of the web, there's these front ends that buyers might use to order their custom dog food or track their puppy's nutrition. And I mean, you can imagine all sorts of things. I'm just kind of making up this dog food example and all that stuff. Even if what you make your money from literally is selling the dog food, the digital experiences that surround it is what's going to differentiate you or solve your customers' problems in all sorts of interesting ways. So it's really helpful to manage those as products, even if you aren't like tracking sales of my dog food website. You're not selling the website, but you sure are, selling dog food through great e-commerce experiences, for example.
And you can't have a bad website really in these days anymore, right? It's just not feasible to be a business and have a face to the internet of
Sure.
junk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you have customers who are users and they have expectations. And I think one of the things you're getting at there, Peter, is that as much as you wish you could, you don't get to set the expectations of those customers either for what makes a great digital experience. They're using Apple tools and Amazon tools and Google tools and traversing the internet all over the place all the time.
Right.
And those companies are setting expectations for how a digital product should work. And, you don't get to sort of say, well, we're better than we were 30 years ago, because that's not where their expectations come from.
Absolutely not. Works with Internet Explorer 4.
That's one thing, Jason, that it would be kind of cool to see, because a lot of I'm on our product channel, right, and I read everything that you post. But one of the problems that I have, and maybe other people have this problem, or maybe it's just is a lot of the concepts that you present are in terms of like, okay, here's this startup, like the last article that you posted from Lenny. I'm going to butcher the last name.
Yep.
But is a visualization of here's how long it took this to go from product to market fit, and then here's the live product, here's the first competitor, all that stuff, right? Well, sometimes what we do at SDG is we work on internal projects and we try to call them products, for customers. And it's more like your dog food example than it is like, hey, I'm going to come up with a new product idea. I'm going to make Slack, right? Or I'm going to make Uber, or what are these things? And how do you take that from? So all the concepts that you talk about, they're all interesting, and it's they're I don't know, cathartic to read about, right? Like, oh, that's if I were going to start a new business, this is how this would, like, this is what it took to go from idea to MVP to customer and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes for guys like me, it's harder to tie those concepts into, well, I'm building this internal product, an insurance company.
Yeah, a trading desk at a whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do those ideas apply to those situations? I would devour the hell out of a Pollinator issue that specifically addressed internalized.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. And that, at SDG, again, we're kind of starting with the SDG experience in terms of what we, our point of view. We work with a lot of those kind of companies, people whose, I describe them as people whose life as a company started before or outside of the internet. And they've kind of had to become technology companies, but first they were dog food companies. They weren't sort of, a cool internet startup that sold dog food. They were a dog food maker. And I don't even know if we work with dog food makers. I think we'd probably do it. But that if we start with, somebody who made dog food, and then we're helping solve their problems of distribution and customer acquisition and supplier integrations and all these things. Those are who we work with. And, that's a lot of the, U.S. and global economy is companies like that. I love that idea, Chad, and thanks for suggesting it, of maybe dedicating not just one but several pollinator issues or even articles to the, non-cool but incredibly awesome types of companies that we work with, just because they don't have that kind of, sizzle of the hot internet startups.
Yes. I mean, so again, like I read everything that you put out. I actually read your blog. I reference your, this has nothing to do with product, but you had a blog post about the language of leaders, right?
Eisenhower. Yep.
Yeah. A decision was made, right? Like,
right.
I use that all the time. Like, I send that article all the time. Anytime I see a decision was made, I'm like, boop.
That's so great, Chad.
I do. Yeah,
it warms my heart, man. That wasn't even an SDG thing. That was just it's a subject for another day. Yep.
Yeah.
The language of leaders.
Day, but I do read a lot of what you put out. The stuff specific to product, I struggle sometimes tying it to what my day-to-day is, because I'll spend a day at a client and I'll see an attempt at a product mindset. I'll just have a feeling like that does not feel right. Like that doesn't seem right. And I'm trying to tie what I see, like, tactically what I'm seeing on the ground to, okay, this is what Jason's writing, and I'm trying to like come up with connective tissue between those two. And it's a struggle for me. So like, if we can actually talk about that at some point, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I would love to. And by the way, Chad, you're a reader of the Pollinator and of other, posts and things, feel free to engage with the writer. Because whoever wrote it would be more than happy to, have a discussion about that, or maybe even have that discussion in public a little bit, because other people probably have those questions too. And I think, that's, again, how we build a strong practice and help our customers build strong businesses.
Well, I very well may invite the writer to a certain bar in Northeast Minneapolis for a meat raffle or some such at some point.
Especially with the baseball playoffs coming up here.
I thought we were going to finally get through one podcast where we didn't mention happy hour.
Never.
Not going to happen.
So we're kind of winding down. We got 4 minutes left to do some maybe parting thoughts, things like that. I just wanted to mention that I like how you're serving up articles from other writers. And putting those kind of synopsis in, examples, and it's really helpful to get that and then dig into those articles. And I will admit, in this product in the garden, you referenced an article about Fender guitars and how the market wasn't guitar players, it was people that wanted to play guitar. I have a Fender Telecaster that I bought 2 years ago that I played for about a half an hour. So I am right in their target market.
Yeah, that was just an awesome article. Like I think of that as like this go-to case study. And as you guys were talking about, it's not a company that just makes software. They make guitars, but they are using their digital experiences to hit these first-time buyers of the product, people who want to learn how to play the guitar. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think it said, something like 90% of people who start playing the guitar never get beyond, lesson 2. They can maybe make one chord and strum it. And that was such a great article about kind of recognizing we're not here for guitar players, we're for people who want to play the guitar, and what's affecting them on their guitar journey. And they recognize the great business value of a lifelong customer to Fender for amps and pedals and everything, new guitars, etc. So, you're talking about many thousands of dollars of lifetime value for a customer if you can get them kind of over some of the initial hurdles. And that's what their digital products are attempting to do.
So any parting thoughts, Peter, Chad?
I would just say, for those who are hearing this podcast, you can find the Pollinator at sdg-pollinator.beehive.com, which is again beehiiv.com. But that's probably hard to remember. And just look on Solution Design Group's social media. You'll find it promoted on our whether we're calling it Twitter or X or LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. It's all over SDG's social media.
We'll put it in the
such,
description.
So, and let's put it in
podcast.
this, so people can find it. Great.
And I recommend people go out there and read it, because you are a writer, Jason. If you don't see yourself that way, you are a writer.
No, I do see myself that way, actually. That's kind of, like I've always said, even though I do this digital product work, I just kind of approach everything as a guy whose core and interest in education and everything is just.
No one says I love sentences unless they're a writer. And I've heard you say that. Chad,
I do.
Peter, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, Oofta is 2 words, no hyphen.
There you go.
I know that thanks to Jason and so many other
I
things.
would say, obviously, based on this, subscribe and pay attention to the Pollinator. It's coming at you.
Great. Awesome.
Jason, thank you very much for being here again. We appreciate it. Peter, thank you for joining us. Hi, Chad.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. No, thank you, Chad. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Don't leave. Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.